Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fins Faithful podcast. As always, guys, we're live on YouTube and on X. Thanks for coming out and hanging with us this evening. Well, season's over, no playoffs. Dolphins finished with an embarrassing loss to the New York Jets to fall to 8-9. But that wasn't even the biggest news to come out of the game. It was mostly after the game. Tyreek Hill did his best Jimmy Butler impersonation, basically saying he wants out. Then a few hours later, Dolphin fans received another punch in the gut when Stephen Ross announced Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel will be back. Yeah, Chris Grier somehow survives again. To help me kind of untangle this whole mess, kind of what it means for them and going forward, I'm joined by Dolphins writer and analyst Jason Sarney. Jason, thank you for coming on. How you doing this evening?
Appreciate you having me on, George. Hope all is well. I know it's not particularly well in Dolphin Nation and fandom, but a couple of things to unpack here. Happy to do it with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I guess let's get the game out of the way quickly. Not much to talk about. To me, it looked like a team that the Jets were smart. They had the scoreboard on, even the game playing, I heard. They saw Denver was up big early. You see the air just kind of leave the team. You combine that with bad offensive line play, 4 turnovers, kind of the perfect storm. If there's anything you want to add in the game quickly, just kind of wrapping up the season.
I mean, you said it. Once they kind of looked at the scoreboard, and I was there, and a lot of the people were there at the MetLife takeover, and I feel like once that 14, 21, 24, once that escalation of that game in Denver just was going on, everything just kind of stopped. And there was a little bit of a trying to comeback effort, a couple of nice little things you could unwrap there. Jonnu Smith, Devon Achane, of course. But ultimately, it was a game that they just lost. The total season was just kind of washed away once that Denver score got away. I feel like there was just no more.
Yeah,
no more to play for.
Yeah, you just saw they are left the team. Some players quit. We'll talk about, I guess. Should we just get into Tyreek? I mean,
it's the best segue at the moment. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, look, I think we start in game. It looks like Tyreek quit on the team, took himself out of the game. There was conflicting reports. I heard Tyreek say that the coaches told him that. But if you listen to Mike McDaniel after the game, he kind of implied that Tyreek made himself unavailable. Regardless, it wasn't a good look. And then you combine that with after the press conference, like I said, I don't know what it is with South Florida athletes now that went out, but he basically said he's got to do what, don't quote me on it, but what's best for him and his family and that he wants out. And the first thing that kind of went to my head is best for you and your family. This organization has been nothing to great to him. Paid him, reworked the contract, defended him. And Jason, for him to go throw everybody under the bus, especially Coach McDaniel has had his back and the players in that locker room kind of. And, it is tough without your quarterback. But what did you expect? Tua being healthy for 17 games was an exception, not the norm. And when you have an injured quarterback, that's what happens. You spent the whole year, I want to stay here. I love it here. You don't get your numbers. You don't get your numbers for the first time in a while. First time you don't make the playoffs. And this is how you kind of repay the organization and the fan base. To me, it showed his true colors. And if he wants out, Jason, I know it's going to be difficult because of the salary cap implications. We can get into that. But don't let the don't let the door hit you on the on the way out for me. Jason, your thoughts on that whole Tyreek situation?
I'm in agreement with you. And when you come out and say things like that, I mean, you can go cryptic. Some people can go cryptic, but this was just flat out flashing his cards right in front of everyone. And you know what? You look back and you could remember games in where he has dropped passes, instances, the Niners game, going back last season in the Chiefs game, in the Eagles game, prime time situations, big time scenarios, many more times this season, even where he just dropped the ball. I mean, literally and figuratively. And for him to take himself out of a game, look, I understand that you're out of the playoffs, and here's the problem with guys, and this is a bigger problem, George. I'm sorry to kind of jump around here.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Tyreek was brought in. So he's not, and I hate saying it like this, like it's like some sort of a caste or class system. He was not a drafted Dolphin. So there might be a little bit of a we got to beat the Jets mentality. But you know what? It would have been great. Let's get a drive together. Let's tie this game. Let's beat these Jets because I'd like to have a winning record. I'd like to sweep the Jets. I don't want the Jets to win. I'm not saying that's the case, but it's maybe a little sprinkle of a captain has to be on the field when it's a one-possession game. I don't care what the circumstances are. It's football. You got to get a win. You got to try to win the game. You don't pull yourself out of the game. They have him returning punts. It's not like they're like saving him or something. You know what I mean? Make yourself available because he was on the bench. It wasn't like he was like around, McDaniel or the team. He was away from the action. He was checked out. And that's a problem. That's a big-time problem.
Yeah, and look, there was a few fun seasons with him, but again, we were back to where tick above average. I mean, what did we really get? I mentioned on my show a few. Actually, in the beginning of the in preseason or maybe before that, I had like 5 hot takes episode. This is when I was doing it only on audio, and I said this would be Tyreek's last year here. But I think that was before they touched the contract, made it a little more difficult. But combine that with all the trolling he does, during the season, these after a loss, avatar change, tweets. Listen, you just lost to the Jets. You had a bad season. You're 8-9, and you're changing your avatar, tweeting things like. And this is a bigger question. This is on McDaniel, Jason. The accountability and kind of where's the leadership at the top of the organization. That's a bigger question. I'm sure we'll get into that, but I think it's going to be difficult to move on from him. Jason, but I think how can they – because I know Tyreek, I know how he works. He's going to come back and kind of say, I was just upset and kind of, I'm sure Drew Rose now, so kind of reel him back in. Do you think the damage is too much done now that they almost got to move on?
I mean, if it was that simple, sure, and the contract wasn't so much of like an albatross.
Yeah,
I mean, look, you can't do anything really from a cut standpoint or a pre-draft standpoint without a massive ramification on the dead cap. The only thing really is to have some sort of a, softening of the blow if you wait till like post June 1st, but then you're going into the summer with all that angst, so I don't know if this could be one of those draft day deals or deals that are salary cap sweeteners or softeners with combinations of draft picks and whatnot. But I'd be surprised if I see Tyreek as a Dolphin next season at this point. I just don't know how, this thing's going to shake out or anyone does at the moment. But you say something like that as a captain, it's hard to accept it from a fan base and from any media standpoint to say, all right, cool, let's just strap up 2025 and forget it ever was said. Absolutely not. Can't do it.
Yeah, I was looking at his on Sport Track, his dead cap. They can't obviously a pre-June 1st trade. It's $28 million in dead cap, and then if you do it post June 1st, you split that $12 million this year, and you split it the rest on the 26. So. And the 26 season would be 12 this year and 15. I mean, the only thing – so you're looking like you're trading him after the draft, so you wouldn't even get help this year. Only thing you could do is maybe the other team picks up some of that dead cap money, kind of buying a pick. I mean, you think that's possible? That's the only way. And you might take a lesser pick, maybe a third or a fourth, if they're willing to do that.
If there is some magic – and look, the thing is you're relying on a GM who people are very soured on to try to get some sort of return for a guy that he traded so much away to help win a Super Bowl. And that was a fail. It wasn't even close, frankly. So if you're asking Chris Grier, all right, what kind of deal are you going to get? There's no win there. There's just absolutely no win of a deal that I could see. You're probably going to see maybe a fourth and a sixth, a third in the next year's fifth, conditionally. Who knows? But I cannot see a top 64 pick. I'd be shocked at this moment.
I'd be shocked at first or second. I don't know. Maybe a late second you might. Maybe.
Because you're dealing with a very good team already. Yeah. So sure, maybe that. But it would be remarkable to see a top 50. Remarkable.
Yeah. Before we move, let me shout out everybody in the chat. Go Time podcast in the house. What's up, buddy? Cap, how you doing? DSG Label, thank you, Rob. Lo-Fi, and Yeah, thank you all for the chat. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Help support the channel. We're with Jason Sarney breaking down the Dolphins kind of mess they're in now with Tyreek Hill. And then we have Jalen Ramsey also wrote a book on Instagram. Did you read all of it and kind of what do you make of that?
I think that's a whole, that
one
that's a
caught me off guard.
fugazi. I think that's a fugazi. I think it's a little bit of we got bamboozled, all of us up, but then that's Dolphins Twitter. But he's actually at the moment, I think within 10, 15 minutes ago, playing back on Twitter. So, but the fact of the matter is, again, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, and when the trade was made, when it was a steal of a deal to bring in Ramsey, but you're bringing in, mercenary type guys. And I'm not saying that in a negative or derogatory way. My whole thing is, and it brings me to the theme, and we can go into management and whatever.
Yeah.
It would be really nice to draft, develop, retain, and resign your homegrown, because it says things to your day 3 draft picks, your undrafted free agents who are working hard in the heat. There are players like that who work their behinds off, but then if they're not going to get paid, what's the point? All right, screw it. It sends a message, And I think we're seeing some players who have checked out, not just Tyreek Hill. I don't want to name names here, but I think we're aware.
Yeah.
But
a certain safety. Safety.
Yeah. But point is, it would be really nice. I get trades. Trades like that should be like the sprinkle, not the foundation. And as good of a player as a Tyreek Hill, as a Jalen Ramsey, as a Bradley Chubb when he's on the field, and a shame he couldn't be back this year. But I think there needs to be a little bit more of that drafting, keeping in town.
You make a great point. I made this point a month or two ago when I said I think that the start of the kind of wrong path of the rebuild was going for the Tyreek Hill trade. Because not that he's not a great player and he helped, but again, what's the difference of a blind? Look at the record of not saying anything about Flores. I'm not saying comparing Flores to coach, but that type of team had about the same success as these other type of team. As this greatest show on surf kind of team. They went from building draft picks, and we're gonna accumulate the picks, build through the draft. All of a sudden, the plan changed, and we went a complete 360 the other way. I thought they should have, especially if you drafted Jalen Waddle. You passed up Penny Sewell. You don't need to trade for another 5'10" receiver, small, fast receiver. That it just didn't make sense. The puzzle pieces, and again, we'll talk a lot about Grier here, but it's kind of Grier's problem. He doesn't know. He can make trades for flashy and high-profile players, but it's more than that. The substance of the roster, you have to do that to compete with the Lions, the Chiefs, the Ravens, even the Steelers. These teams, that's the problem with this roster, and they just flipped it on its head, and went to this F them picks. Do you think? And when we look back, it was a mistake, that trade. Do you agree with me that as crazy as it sounds, might have been the start of where the rebuild went south?
The rebuild to me had like 3 chapters of it, and it was all trying to read 3 different blueprints of other organizations in mix. They tried to replicate the Patriot way. They tried to replicate or kind of carbon copy the Shanahan offense in the Niner way. And then you can maybe sprinkle in with Tyreek Hill, trying to do something what the Chiefs were doing, with hopefully having Tua being that quarterback. But the Chiefs flipped everything on the head when they traded us Tyreek. So now I'm kind of thinking that you really should draft your talent and not trade for these big-time receivers. Buffalo traded Stephon Diggs. Look at what they're doing. But, of course, they have Josh Allen. So that's a whole other thing to get into. But it's a very difficult pill to swallow, knowing that there are players doing very well, not with the Dolphins anymore, and there's traded for talent who are seemingly wanting out or just past the prime where they can give us their best play to hopefully win a championship. I think that ship has sailed with the Ramsey and with the Hill at this point.
Yeah. If you had to put a percentage if Tyreek Hill's coming back next year, what would you put it at?
I'm gonna put it at 1 because I hate saying
I agree.
Nothing's. I hate.
I agree.
Just to save a little face. Yeah, sure. I'm not gonna call anything a 1,000% or 100% scenario in this world here. So I'll put 1%.
Yeah. Beachways makes a great point. Another trade, the Chubb trade. I mean, I think we're probably the only team that was willing to give him. You gave up a first-round pick and then the contract. I just think they need to be a little more patient, I think, and kind of keep building this roster. Because you see the lack of depth. It's because they don't have a lot of good young players on the back end of this roster.
Correct. I mean, you're looking at like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round, and that's where you really want to get like your depth, your core, your guys that you're going to keep around because they can sub on in and give a couple of good games, give good snaps throughout their careers, and there's just been too much of a rotation, too much of a revolving door in and out, and too limited amount of picks because of all these trades and the wheeling dealing. And you're having drafts where your first pick is in the 3rd round, and you can't do that if the 3rd pick and the 4th pick in that draft are not hitting, or none of them are hitting in that round.
Yeah, DSG says if you drop Hill, you drop Tua. No, I think Tua's biggest problem is health. The notion that he's not a good quarterback in this league, whether you want to say he's top 10, top 15, that's nonsense. It's the health. And I think Tua has shown enough where he could succeed without Hill. The offense is going to change. And we'll talk about that when we get to the offseason, because I think this offense is going to see an overhaul. Besides the quarterback and the running back position, I think their style is going to have to change, especially if they don't have Hill, because he pulled gravity. Whether you like him or not, even not having as many catches, the attention he brought opened up things for the Jonnu Smiths and stuff. So, all right. So, moving on from Tyreek, about an hour and a half later, we get the statement, right? First of all, I want to ask, when that game hit 0 on the clock, Jason, did you believe Chris Grier was coming back?
At that exact moment, I thought that there would probably be a change for sure in one way. I'll say that. So I was surprised when the statement came out.
Yeah, I said about 3 weeks ago on the show, I said 95% he's coming back. Then when the whispers started to happen, I go, whoa, that's new. We never heard whispers about Chris Grier from Albert Breer or anything like that. But yeah, he releases in the statement, Grier's coming back with McDaniel. Do you agree with the decision? And were you shocked that Chris Grier is back?
I was not shocked. I was like, it's typical. Like, there was no shock.
Yeah.
So there was more almost like, I guess I want to use the word disappointment, because what disappoints me is if I'm going to ask the direct question, what have you done for me lately? That's what this football league is. What have you done for me lately? It could be a great player, and if it's not a good situation, you're expendable. This team has not done anything for us lately. And I have been a Chris Grier apologist. I've been a fan of certain mindsets and certain things that he's done. I think he recognizes and initially brings in good talent. But let's laundry list the players that have come in and have gone who are excelling. I'm not starting with the player that everyone thinks I'm going to start with. I'm going to go a little bit further back. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick. It didn't work out. Well, that's now Austin Jackson. You have Laramie Tunsil. You want to dissect that? Here we go. But that trade was lost. We lost that trade. Oh, by the way, both those two players, Pro Bowlers this season. So is Andrew Van Ginkel. You're looking at a guy like Brandon Jones having a terrific year in the secondary and this as a safety. You're looking at Deshaun Elliott having a terrific year. By the way, what was the most glaring, awful positional group for us this year? Safety. How were we in sacks? Bottom tier in the NFL in sacks. They were in the top 3 last year. You waved goodbye to dozens of sacks with what you could have brought back home. So it's really odd to understand why you're almost like you're not rewarding the proper people. You're giving the money to the people that you're trading for, great, but you're not keeping home the guys that you're telling that you should be telling your other bottom barrel of the roster guys who were drafted late. This could be you. Like you perform, we could say, thank you, here's your contract, stay home with us. That's not been happening. And there's even Kyle Van Noy going back to a couple of years ago. Why did he go out the door? Why did they let him leave or do whatever happened? He's a great player. So A lot of question marks of who they're letting leave.
Yeah, and it's when I talk about the puzzle pieces, it's a ripple effect. You bring back Van Ginkel, you don't need to drop, even though Chop, look, he's been fantastic, right? But look, it's still early. The book's still completely. I always knew Chop's upside, and I was just worried about the lack of production. But I got to give him credit. He looks like the ceiling's there. I see the vision, but you don't have to do that. You can draft a Graham Barton, and then everything has a ripple effect. And it just seems like Grier makes more wrong decisions than right. And here's the problem with Chris Grier, right? And it's a problem with any team in the middle. He's not awful at his job. He's just not really good. He's not good enough to compete. Everybody scouts, there's a lot of players to go around. The difference is in the coaching staffs and the front offices. And we don't have that area, especially in the front office and the head coach, to compete with the Lions. I mean, look at their timeline. Same build, same year. Look at the difference, And to me, we're continuing this Ferris wheel of mediocrity, Jason. And I think Stephen Ross, he's mid-80s. What did he value? Stability. There's harmony. The coach GM relationship is not toxic for once. So he kind of doesn't want to do it over again. But he's basically telling you guys that he's telling us and the fans that we're just accepting being mediocre. And, these are my children. I just want them to do better. You know what I mean? And the only positive I'll take, and I'll let you jump in after this, is that, I think this is a clear sign. If it doesn't work out this year, I think all three are gone. I think the quarterback's gone, the GM's gone, and the head coach is gone. And that's the only thing that gives me some hope. Not that I want them to lose, but that if you would have done it this year, you're not going to get the good candidate. You're going to get another Dennis Hickey because you got to inherit the coach and the quarterback, and GMs, really good top candidates, have choices. They want to draft their own quarterback. They want to have their own coach. So that's, to me, is the only positive there, Jason.
I agree with you. And I do think that if there was a scenario in another parallel universe where Grier was fired and that statement didn't come out, I think that you're right. It's fair that if you want to bring in a new GM, he's going to have to shop for his own groceries, and it starts with the coach and everything on the way down. So it does appear at this exact moment that it's a final year going into this year. It really truly has to be with that trio that you mentioned. And you know what? If there is that final year, this year they have draft pick capital. They do have a good war chest, so to speak, of draft picks, and that's a whole other world to discuss the draft. But it's got to be the mentality. I really, truly think it's got to be the mentality. And this whole offensive line discussion, you had an ability to solidify the interior of an offensive line while having Austin Jackson coming off a great year and signed, Teron Armstead through Patrick Paul. So you literally have bookends taken care of essentially going into the season. You bring in an Aaron Brewer, and then you say, we're not going to care about the gaps in between. Well, let me tell you something. Those are very important gaps. And when it's 4th and 1, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, we all say, why are they doing plays behind the line of scrimmage? Yeah, we get it. I get it. It's because there's a fear of the push of the line when they need it. They can't do it. So as good of a year that Aaron Brewer had, as nice as a potential that a good Austin Jackson could be, a healthy Teron Armstead could be, and a potential of Patrick Paul, you have to draft multiple guards or bring in absolute good free agent guards this year, because there's been too much of a rotation. There's been too much of inconsistency. Liam Eichenberg, come on. It just has not worked out with a traded for player. So it's not only you're investing the pick, you lost the pick with bringing him in. So that is not just a miss. That's a double miss. That's a double play. You grounded into a double play on that one.
Yeah. Shout out to the Dive Bar podcast.
Oh, yeah.
They're in the house. They're doing great things. I saw that what a coincidence. They had Jeff Darlington with the Dive Bar podcast. Shout out to those guys, a friend of the program. Also, shout out to 1896 Vice, Kadeem Simmons from Go Time, Clown Prince. If this is Grier's last year, then he's going to make desperate moves to keep his job. That's why you got to get rid of him now. True. He knows he's on the hot seat now. I do think you might see Grier tell McDaniel, hey, no, we're not doing this. I think he knows now that he's run out of the 9 lives. He's on his 8th one. That it's a great point. I think you're going to see them try to do something here. They don't have a lot of flexibility though, so that's a problem.
I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in this offseason, the draft. I would hope that maybe it's a little less in the going free agency wild, but more so really focusing on hitting this draft. Even if it is, I'll tell you what, if you have 10 picks and you have to move up in a situation to go get your guy and you turn it into 7 picks, fine. This is the draft to maybe do that. If you see an offensive lineman, if you see a safety, if you hear rumors that a Malachi Starks is a top 10 pick and you got to move up 3, I'll pay that price, man. I would do that this year, knowing that the hit rate of picks, we're not talking a 75, 80% hit rate kind of person. So the premium to get that kind of guy, you need a safety. Go up and get him if you need to. If he falls to 13, fantastic.
Yeah, especially with Starks. One thing Grier is good at is evaluating safeties. I mean, that'll give him. And it's a position where the risk, to me, it's a less of a risk with him. Hopefully, yeah. Shout out to the dive bar. Yeah, and look, speaking of the draft, no matter what happens this year, right? The quarterback position going into the 25 season, they're going to have some contingency plan. And I'm not just talking about Andy Dalton, man. If you really, when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh. But maybe it's an Andy Dalton and you draft a guy. I wouldn't go high this year in the first round. I would wait to the 26th draft, but I would take 1 3rd, 4th round. If it doesn't work out, so what? We go again. We dip in again, and then we go high in the 26th draft. How would you kind of approach this year with the quarterback position? And is Tyler Huntley showing you enough to come back maybe, or you're looking behind Tua, clean house?
Yeah. I mean, if you're asking me, I like Tyler Huntley. If you're asking me, has he done enough maybe to compete, but I wouldn't sign him and lock him up. Like, I don't think that's a surefire. I think draft, you have to be top 100 interested, maybe not top 2 rounds, but certainly in the 3rd or 4th round, you're gone. Because you know what? This whole thing is not the nightmare that it is if a very decent backup won 2 games for us. We're talking about a playoff game if that's the case. If there was an absolute NFL-ready top 5 backup, the whole season could be different. But that was not an invested in position. So they have to draft a quarterback. And you're right. I would do it every year until one hits and says, we have something here. Yeah. He could be a starter. But right now he's our backup.
Yeah, you got to get somebody in the pipe. You got to get some young prospects in the pipeline here. Again, I wouldn't go high, but like if a Riley Leonard or a Jackson Dart, something like that. Unless I'll tell you the guy. This is we'll do a lot of the draft stuff in the offseason here. This is when all this stuff gets cooking. But Jalen Milroe, to me, that type of guy. I know. Wait, walk with me here. Not as the guy you're going to come in, a guy to hand the clipboard. I want to see somebody with that kind of physical ability at that position. Develop them. Let's see what Mike McDaniel can do with an athlete like that at quarterback. I'm especially in this draft, though, is because I'm not in love with many of these quarterbacks. Even at the top, I'm not in love with. I saw the smirk in your face. You must not be a Milroe fan.
No, player great, but let's just draft another Alabama quarterback. And just to me, it's just like, oh my God, what are we doing? The optics. Oh my God, that word, the optics. I don't even want to say that word. Yeah. But it would be, I'll tell you, it would be a very interesting selection of what the chatter would be after that.
We need some juice. We need some juice, Jason.
I don't. It's a funny world to think about living in. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It's a funny world.
Is there any guys you like early on, or you haven't?
I'm thinking either solidify the trenches, which is always going to be good if you have the best player available on either side of the trenches. But the guards, you're not drafting a tackle in the first round. So guards, I think in the second round, you can get a couple of guys out of Georgia that might fit. Tate Ratledge, I believe, is a guard, but Starks in the first. I draft 2 Georgia players. Right off the bat, if you can get Starks at 13, Carson. Phenomenal. And then any run blocking.
I thought you were going there.
No. A lot of Georgia players. But I need an athletic guard that could help in the run game. Obviously you want a good pass protecting lineman, but if someone can excel could be just a nasty run blocker who could help with the second level and get out in space. Someone who could literally say, we need a yard, follow me. Like, we need two of those guys. Because then if you have that speed and power, even without Tyreek, there's plenty of speed and skill position left on this team that you could juice up a speed and power combination. But you need an interior line to have any type of a trench presence on the offensive side. And we've seen them not have it, and they're scared of it. They're scared of it by doing toss plays, screen plays, ridiculous plays that are beginning 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, 2 yards behind the point of where you're actually starting with the ball. So you need interior line play. I'd be thrilled with defensive back and trenches just to make it simple in the top two.
Okay, I see. And then maybe quarterback, third round, fourth round.
Yes, that's a world I definitely want to live in.
Maybe one of those two, because it looks like with Wilkins, it's going to be a 4, right? Not a 3.
Yeah, that's again. Yeah. You're rolling the dice with these compensatory selections.
Yeah.
And I'd rather the player. In Wilkins' case, it was too much, but
yeah. Like you said, we're not. The problem is you should have signed Hunt and Wilkins a year or two in advance.
Right.
That's where it becomes the issue.
Yeah.
So you talked a little about the offseason. What are some of the needs? We've mentioned some of the needs, but what is your kind of on your board here? If we got to compete to fix this, right? If we're going to fix this, like Chris Grier said, Stephen Ross mentioned championship team. I don't know what world he's living in that he thinks this team can compete for a championship. But kind of where you go. Safety, you mentioned, interior offensive line. Is that kind of – I'm thinking maybe big receiver, especially maybe 2 receivers, especially if Tyreek's not back.
Well, the easy answer is to see what you're losing first and what is potentially lost first. You're going to probably, if Calais Campbell retires, you're going to need to find, someone to be on that same line with Sealer. All the receivers are question marks. Berrios gone, Craycraft gone probably. If Hill's out of here, you're going to need to bring, I would hope, a big-bodied receiver in.
What about the kid out of Arizona? The Arizona kid.
It's too early for that. I mean, that's if you invest a first-round draft pick in him, McMillan. He'd probably be gone like the top 6-7 picks. But
if you really believe in him, move up. He reminds me a lot of Mike Evans.
Oh wow! I mean, you saw how good Mike Evans is now. This is the kind of draft, again, that if you have a conviction in a player, and it better be a massive need. And if there is a trade-up, let's see who the player is. If it's a game changer like that, and you're telling me we're getting a Mike Evans, I could sign up. I can get on board.
In the world, yeah.
I can get on board. But, in terms of like outside the draft, you're going to have to hit on the same minded guys. Like, you did well with Jordan Brooks, did well with Jonnu Smith, get a couple of more guys like that. But in the draft, it's got to be the trenches. It's got to be defensive backs. Give me that tall receiver and maybe a tight end that could be a B to Jonnu Smith, because Smith's got one more year on the deal, and who knows what's going to happen. But, that was literally just going to say.
Yeah. That's why I brought it back up. I know the dive bar.
The dive bar would be handing out drinks on them for like a decade if that happened, I feel like. Tyler, I mean, look, I'm from Pennsylvania. That would be phenomenal. But not from Pennsylvania, just living here. But he's a hell of a player. It would be a great 1-2 punch. That is potential. But I do believe that the Dolphins have never, ever, ever drafted a tight end in the first round. So that would be a difference. That would be a major difference.
The highest is the second round, I believe.
Yeah.
Jarrett makes an interesting point here, and this is kind of what I want to talk about. Ditch the speed aspect of your team. Time to get tough, physical. That's what the good teams are. Build the line, and give to a running game. Of course, we all can see that. For some reason, the general manager, who was brought back again, doesn't. But I think they're going to go. I think he knows now. He knows the narrative. I think he's going to go heavy on the trenches, knowing that that's the issue and knowing this is the final straw. I know I've said this for like 4 years now, but I think this really is the final straw for him. But I think you're going to see an offensive philosophy change in style in this offense, a little bit of overhaul in personnel. Do you agree with that? And do you like this? And do you like Tua with this kind of, efficiency kind of run game kind of offense?
I like it to have as a component, not as a reliance point of it. I mean, when this is your absolute bread and butter, and when you can't have that, you're just going absolutely broken, barren, and famished. It's just not working. There's no tough component because they just have proven that they can't just get those key short yardage situations taken care of. So yeah, I would welcome a tough mindset and throw in the speed and the trickery out of nowhere. Make the norm toughness and physicality, and then all of a sudden, when people are on their heels, that's when you switch it up.
Yeah, everybody talks about the too high. You know how you get rid of the too high? An effective running game.
There
you bring him in, and you still will have Jalen Waddle. You drafted him 6 overall. You paid him the money. You don't need Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You know what I mean? So to me, I think we're going to see that kind of overall. I think it's going to be real interesting, man. This upcoming season with that. I wanted to ask you something, and this is something I just thought of. How involved is Tom Garfinkel in the day-to-day football operations, and how involved do you think he was in bringing Grier back? Because I think this is a guy we're not talking about enough. I think he's the number one guy in Stephen Ross's ear. And I have a theory that, look, I don't think he's done a fantastic job on the business side and with the stadium and all that stuff, but I think he's over his head if he's doing anything on the football side, and he probably knows that if you bring in somebody else, it's going to disrupt what they got going. So I think he wants it to stay the same. I think they're kind of getting in Stephen Ross's head here. Do you know anything about the role that Garfinkel has with the organization?
I mean, from a specific standpoint on how much in a football standpoint, I cannot speak confidently and accurately on that. I do know that he is a sports executive who has done terrific in a business sense in putting in profitable scenarios for a sports and an entertainment organization. So, you can't fault him at his job because I'm not putting football on him. I'm putting him being part of a football team and as a part of Hard Rock Stadium, which is really becoming, and I'm not doing this to do anything other than just be accurate. It's more than football. And that's
of course
potentially a problem.
All you got to do is walk in the stadium.
I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but like for it's bigger than football, and that I know his job is bigger than football, and I know that he does that well. If we're going to put that into a whole world of how he's doing, so I don't know if I don't know if he's going to go up to Stephen Ross and say, you know what, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think he does that on a quarterback or on a defensive.
We don't know. Situation. I guess we don't know. Yeah,
we don't know.
But I think he's more involved in the football side than maybe we believe. That's you know what I'm saying. Stephen Ross seems like a guy. Which is strange because he's such a successful businessman. Seems like a guy that he doesn't know he doesn't know football, right? So he gets somebody he trusts, and I'll give Stephen Ross credit in his statement. He said this doesn't mean that the status quo is okay. So he's realizing that this Ferris wheel here is not okay. So maybe there's some hope there, but. What's up, Duke? Thanks for joining us again. We're with Jason Sarney, Dolphins writer and analyst. Guys, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We literally could not run the ball up the middle all season long because of our guard play. Yeah. That has to be fixed. Yeah, I agree. That should be. Would you go draft free agency there? Would you go? That's why I was hoping you can get off some of that Tyreek money so you can invest it in some of the interior. How would you kind of handle that draft and two in the draft, then in free agency?
I would be the happiest. I would literally do a dance on a table and live stream it if they drafted 2 guards, left and a right, in consecutive picks. If they ended up with 2 guards in the top 4 rounds, I think that screams the mindset that you all want us to fix. We're going to fix. Not saying that people on Twitter screaming for us fixing the line is what they're going to listen to, but it's telling everyone that they're changing. So if they can get a couple of interior, look, you could draft 2 teammates these days, to have some continuity who just know each other. I know they're not playing next to each other, but look, draft at least 1 guard in your top 2 rounds, I think at bare minimum.
Yeah, I agree. Then I go safety, man, has got to be overhauled. I think, we mentioned the receiver. Linebacker, I'd probably bring back Tyrell Dodson. I mean, on a cheap contract. That's a hit for Grier. I'll give him that. You got your tight end room. There's also smaller stuff like the tight end room behind John who needs another young guy. This is a good tight end draft, if I'm not mistaken. Really good one. So, and a really good running back class, a power back. A guy who I would like in free agency, I know he got hurt, but Najee Harris, just that kind of back. But you could probably draft one in the fourth. I believe they have 2 fifths, so you could probably draft, and Dotson, and we still need one more linebacker. All right.
I would agree then. I would totally agree with what you said.
Yeah. You need another one. Okay. Is there anybody on this team you think won't be back next year that maybe we're not thinking of? I don't think Holland will be back. Is there somebody? Go ahead.
Look, there are guys that, second tier roster guys, your middle of the range guys, your Isaiah Wynns, your Robert Joneses, your Benito Joneses, you're probably saying goodbye to your veteran running backs and Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert, so you're going to need another running back one way, shape, or form. Is it Emmanuel Ogbah going to be coming back? Remember, they didn't sign him in the initial opportunity to. They cut him. They let him go. And then up in an emergency, they brought him back. So that was a little bit out of luck. And I tell you, Ogbah had a great year under the circumstances. Had a great year normally. Yeah. A couple of restricted free agents. I don't think Javon Holland is going to be back. I honestly don't. I think that, you know what? I think he can get paid. I do.
Yeah, he's looking for the bag.
His representation has been known to do that, and that is their MO across the board, and they do that very well. So I would have no doubt that there will be a hefty contract put in front of him, but will Chris Grier match it? I don't think he likes the word match. I don't think he does that. He clearly hasn't shown that he will in the last couple of rounds. So, I think there's a lot of players that are going to need to be replaced and a lot of holes that need to be filled. They're very top heavy with the absolute good dogs and great players. A lot of people have been tweeting that I see, like, who are the dogs on this team? Like, there's a dozen. There's a dozen. But you got to really fill this roster out, and you got to hit in the draft. You got to really draft and develop this talent and retain them.
Yeah, shout out to Julian in the chat. What's up, Julian? Yeah, and also I think you're seeing that we mentioned the lack of depth. It's because of the draft, the lack of the – you can't, and if it's not like for example, it's not even just to have the high picks. How many third and fourth and fifth round picks do the Ravens always have? The Rams, they hit on those. They have multiple. We're not picking the first 2 rounds, and we have like 1/4 and 1/7, and you just can't do that. You can't survive, and you're seeing that now. No, I think Ramsey. I think that was him just a troll job there, and Bradley Chubb, Anthony Weaver. I know everybody says I don't think he'll be gone. I think Anthony Weaver's time is not yet. I think he'll be like he'll be in the top 2 or 3 for a lot of jobs. I don't know if he'll get one. But how big of a loss is that going to be with Weave, man? He seems like he's really got a good grasp on the defense, on the players. Really love him.
Now, I like Weaver a lot. I like how he calls his plays. He mixes in his blitz packages, which is not the same nearly at all from last year in Fangio. But when you look at the raw numbers, yes, it says top 10 defense. Yes, but there have been instances where there's been too many chunk plays. There's been coverage aspects. There's been just certain head-scratching things like lack of turnover creation, lack of sacks as opposed to last year. But I mean, you could also attribute it to some injury. You don't have Bradley Chubb all season. You lose Jalen Phillips, things do happen. But I like how the players respond to him. I do like his defensive-minded approach, and I think he is going to get a head coaching job. Is it going to be this year? I don't know, but I would hope that it's not, because I'd like to see what he could do with some more development, healthy roster, and potentially, Phillips, Chop, and Chubb. That's pretty.
You think Chubb comes back?
I mean, we'll see. Yeah. Probably, definitely a much higher percentage than the Tyreek Hill percentage that you laid out and gave me.
Yeah.
But I do think that Weaver would be great if he stays back in Miami. If just the job's not ready for him yet, make him an assistant head coach. And just God forbid if it doesn't work out, maybe slide him in. That's just maybe.
Yeah.
Set yourself up for that.
Yeah. Do you are you bringing in a coordinator if it was you running the show? Bringing in an offensive coordinator with McDaniel, or keeping it with Frank and Bevel?
I do think that McDaniel has a lot as a head coach to kind of put on the plate, whereas his bread and butter used to be the play calling. But now there's a lot of things that are going through the mind, and I think we've seen that with the bad challenges, the timeout maintenances. He does need help doing aspects of the game, but I don't know if it's play calling just yet. Maybe there's some sort of an advisory aspect to it, sure, but I think that there needs to be someone in his ear in a better way helping throughout the process. How that is specifically, I'm very excited to see, but I'm more worried about other coaching things like the clock maintenance, when you're doing certain things. How many times are you leaving your team at the end of a half with one or two less timeouts?
I was watching the game, and this is a hard game to watch at the end. But I'm thinking, where did all our? My brother was watching the game with me. I go, where did all our timeouts go? I mean, who advises him on the challenges? Like,
one of my biggest things.
Yeah, you watch it and you're like, okay, that's not even close. It's embarrassing when they had the ref official from New York on there. He's like, it's not even close. It's you said it, the game situation, play calling and situational. I think he's a good play designer. I still have questions about his play calling, right? But again, clock management, timeout. What was the game that we had about a second left? We almost didn't even hit the field goal. It was the game before last. At halftime, we went down with 1 second. I mean, the clock management, the challenges. I mean, he wants to be a better leader of men. Jason, I don't know about you, man. Either to be a leader of men, you either have it or you don't. You have it when you walk in a room. I just don't know if Mike McDaniel is all of a sudden now going to be able to change his personality after 3 years. There's a reason why the players love him. So all of a sudden he's going to do a 360. I just don't know how that's going to work.
It would be really interesting to see if there was a different, completely different mindset of a coach that comes in, how players would respond to that. So I don't know. I do like the rapport that he has with the players, but there really has to be more of an accountability, more of a, again, it goes into like the tough-mindedness. It goes into the cold weather scenario. It goes into just dealing with the elements and the outside noise. And a lot of times McDaniel, when he tries to dissect the problem, it is unfortunately just noise. It's repetitive words, but there's not actions to fix the words.
Empty calories, no substance there.
Correct. Right. Yeah, I love Mike McDaniel. It's all
word salad. Yeah.
But the word salad, yes. But I do think it's a jumbling of things together that he tries to do. And that's kind of in the game. There's a jumbling of things that is on his plate. Let's take something off the plate. Let's stick to what you're really great at. And if you have to bring someone in to stare at a screen and literally call down when there's an unequivocal, challengeable play, or at least to say, do not take the flag out of your pocket, Mike. The nose hit the turf, or his hand was under the ball. I'm watching it now. That person, if that person exists, is horrible at the job.
Yeah.
Or if Mike McDaniel appointed that person, or the combination of both, it was a bad appointment. So that needs to change.
Hopefully that person is Danny Crossman. We can kill two birds.
Now that would be the best double play of the night. That would be great.
Oh,
that would be great.
Yeah, I mean,
it brings us to special teams too.
Poor George is still on the yo-yo. Get off the Dolphins, yo. There will be no leader, no toughness. Look, I love this team, man. All these people are going to boycott the team. I'm not going anywhere, man. I mean, I am getting tired of it. You do get indifferent about a lot of things now, but and it's not because I do this show. I love this team. You know what I mean? So all the fans out there boycotting, nice try, but I've never seen it happen. It will never happen, right? I mean,
I'll say this too, George, and for everyone out there. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I know there's very different situations, but yes, this seems bleak. Yes, it's bad, but right after the 1-15 season, things changed and they won the darn division. I know it was the last time they won a division, but football's weird like this. So there could be small changes or huge changes that flip the script. So you never know. No boycotting. Let's hold on. No burning jerseys or t-shirts.
Oh yeah,
either.
I saw that.
If you're gonna burn a jersey or make a statement, find out who can't afford something like that as a luxury. Ship it out to them. I can't stand watching that.
Yeah, I didn't like that either. All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. We'll end it on this. You just said it. Give these fans something to be optimistic. Leave us with an optimistic view. Okay, I like this. This could happen here if they do this and this and that.
There are good amounts of bright spots on this team. We've seen how things can work when everything is chugging along. Even if you take out Tyreek, you could look at, a great hit of a draft pick like Malik Washington. I do think that this guy could be an absolute fantastic two-way player. Think about like a Devon Best, how good of a 4-year run that he had as a slot receiver, return man. I think that could be a terrific hit. You look at Jordan Brooks, you look at Tyrell Dotson, you look at Zach Sealer. I mean, if you're talking about one of the most superstar statistical players that's not a superstar in the league, it's Zach Sealer. So I really hope that we're going into a 2025 where the league and the nation recognizes his greatness. So Jonnu Smith, in the last 8 games of this season, Jonnu Smith had 55 catches, 500-something yards, and 7 touchdowns. I mean, if you think about that, I mean, and that's a bright spot. We got him coming back for another year. So there are bright spots. You need a lot more. Chop Robinson was challenging a rookie record, of Jalen Phillips. You get Jalen Phillips back next year. I know as my buddy Stephen Daniels would like to say, that he is a little bit of a hopium dealer, but a lot needs to be fixed. But there are some things to build on, and hopefully you learn from the mistakes and you move forward from this year.
Thank you, Steven.
And of course, Devon Achane, of course.
Yeah, Devon. Yeah, it was good to see him. You don't get to see him caught from behind a lot. I was hoping he'd take that to the house, but and it would have helped actually, because they ended up. What did we go?
Ended up on a field goal. Did they even get the field? Yeah, it was the field goal. But you got to score on those drives. You 4 yards out, you got to score.
What's up, Steve? How you doing? And thank you for joining the chat. Shout out to Jason. They're giving you the shout out. Clown Prince, with Hill gone, it will be interesting to see Waddle's game elevate. Yeah, that's a good point. And the complimentary piece, we talked about that. It'll be interesting, Jason.
If Hill is going to be traded, and you're asking a signed, paid Jalen Waddle to now insert as the 1, is Malik Washington now the 2, or do you keep Malik as kind of that slot? You have to draft them. You have to get a top 2 or 3 round wide receiver or sign one. You're not bringing in T. Higgins probably, but not.
I wouldn't do that either.
Yeah, not the thing to do. But if you're going to ask Jalen Waddle to be that number 1, does he have the potential? I mean, he's shown it, but this year was a little bit of a rough off year for him. And, there's some not great with Jalen. So we'll see with him.
Yeah, McMillan out of Arizona. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you, if there's a trade that goes on in the top 5 and he's still available, I'm going to think of you. I'm going to be, is this it?
No, I just like that kind of I think the notion that Tua only can play with these speedy guys is look at Jonnu Smith.
Oh, I agree with that. That's the choice. The speedy guys was a choice of what they wanted to build the offense around with those two. I mean, it's not saying don't get a 6'2", 6'3" prototypical wide receiver.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll leave it there. We got the offseason. We'll have you covered. We got, it doesn't stop. We got playoff, Super Bowl. Then we got the East-West Shrine, the Senior Bowl, the Combine, the draft. So we'll have you covered next week. I'll be on next Monday thinking about maybe doing a season in review. I'm not sure yet. Jason, before we let you out, tell everybody where they can find your work and they can follow you at so they can catch your great work.
I appreciate you having me on, George, very much. You can find me on Twitter doing work with Dolphins Wire and Athlon Sports. So would love to chop it up with you anytime, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I had a blast. We'll definitely do this again. As always, guys, stay Fins faithful. We're out.